to the Trinity Force Podcast. Yo, it's that Triforce cast beaming straight to your home. Grab a beer so we know Pone ain't drinking alone. Send an email, a quick tweet, just pick up the phone. Leave a message at the beep if you're a creep, watch your tone. Discuss the meta game, patch notes, whatever helps your stats most. Obi-Pone Kenobi is your last hope to snatch gold. So grab your headphones and join in the fun. We'll try and force in some jokes and some cringeworthy puns. Yo, we can make it together, people. Trinity Force Podcast. These boys are second to none. Now that's the end of the intro. It's time we begun.
Well, tonight, boys, it's going to be a great night. Do you want to know why?
Why?
Because I found out my wife is pregnant. Well, I didn't find out, but everybody now finds out.
Oh, geez. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congrats, buddy.
That's amazing.
Well, yeah. So I found out, 13 weeks ago. But still.
Yes.
It's we got to see the ultrasound today, and I got to hear his little heartbeat, and it sounds like 150 racehorses galloping. It's amazing.
Nice and cozy in there.
Yeah, we don't know its gender yet, so I'm just gonna call it he because it's easier at this point. He's just kind of cozy, laying on his side, his little hands up in the air. He's not moving because he's sleeping, but his little heart's racing. So
Biding this time.
He's just got to wait it out.
Yeah, just give it a minute.
So he'll be on the podcast in, 8 months?
Yeah, something like that. About he or she will make an appearance on the podcast to show the world the youngest offspring of the Cogswell household.
You, DeClawed, and Hornet could do Dadcast then.
Ranhurt too.
Ranhurt too.
Yeah, Ranhurt's got 2 of them. Dadcast, yeah. No, so I have been talking to, there's been one listener who has emailed me, and he's like, haha, you're having a baby the same time I am. I caught everything you said. I know like that. I know what's happening. And I'm like, shh, just keep it on the down low. I know I almost fucking screwed it up like 3 weeks ago or something.
I think there is a point in one of those episodes where everyone on went really wide-eyed or something.
So yes, that's my exciting news for this evening, and I hope everybody else is excited as I am for it, and the little Cogs will make its appearance on the podcast then. So, but speaking of a new addition, we have Warwick, who is the latest addition to the Rework Champions for League of Legends, and Skyen has joined us this week.
That was a smooth transition. Hi there.
That was one of your better ones.
Thank you. So, yes, as always, Skyen from Caster Comics fame, TB Skyen on Twitter, and you can find him at castercomicswithanx.com. You can check out all his great feed and artwork that he supplies to us so we can all laugh and enjoy it. So please go support him, as we always say. But he joins us with every champion rework or new champion release to talk about the lore and the aesthetics of the champion. And if we have time, we get into a bit about how the champion plays. Now, those of you who are looking about exactly how to play Warwick and what's going on with him and all that kind of stuff, tune in on Wednesday as we'll have a more concise recap. I did put in, I think, 10 games of Warwick this weekend, so I've got a pretty good idea what's going on with him. But it gives us a little bit more time to play around with it. So I guess, Skyen, the floor is yours if you'd like to have it.
Yeah, I mean, if we're looking at the aesthetics of New Warwick, it's sort of more interesting to look first at what they didn't change, that he's still a werewolf, and he's still pretty much the standard edition werewolf in terms of his biology. They said something in some of the promotional articles and stuff they put out that they wanted to make him more of a chimera, sort of a blending of different animals. So he's got bat ears now instead of wolf ears, and so. But if that was the intention, they have kind of failed because he's still just a werewolf, just with bigger ears. And there's really and fundamentally they haven't changed a lot about what made Warwick. He's still the quintessential werewolf. The thing that you might notice if you look at the new splash art is that his face and his features are deprioritized. They're shoved back into the image, and the thing that juts out at the viewer, the thing they want you to take a look at, is the hex tech chem augmented whatever the hell is going on in that particular arm, and then the green glow on his back of the machinery, sort of emphasizing that, yeah, he's a werewolf, but now he's a steampunky cyborg werewolf. And that's the thing that's going on. So the splash art is sort of meant to emphasize that aspect of him and deprioritize the he's just another goddamn werewolf bit of him.
I'm
so that's
fine
kind
with
of
that.
the thing they're pushing.
That's totally. They added at least something that makes it unique from the kind of worn out werewolf trope at this point and everything.
Yeah.
And by all accounts, he's always a wolf. Like, this is what he is now. There's no changing with the moon or any of that shit anymore. So at least from that type of standpoint, it feels like a more distinct type of creature, even if they're still working pretty heavily in the werewolf archetype.
Yeah, it's a clever decision to shove a bunch of hex tech into him, because that's kind of League's. First of all, this League of Legends signature aesthetic is to have this sort of magic hex techy kind of stuff as part of different characters and champions, and also it ties him much stronger to Son as a city state. They've been doing a lot of work trying to tie champions to the city states and the regions that they're supposed to belong to, and this is a very good way to do it with Warwick, because the whole green ooze and kind of dirty metal kind of thing, that is the Son aesthetic in a nutshell. So they've kind of really plastered that all over him to tie him to Twitch, to tie him to Sack, to tie him to the other Son champions.
It's nice to see them add that in, like, because they've really been pushing the envelope of what Hex Tech itself is really capable of doing. We saw it with Camille and everything, and while that's a very refined type, version of the science and everything, this is really just like, you know what? This technology is also capable of just literally being shoved into someone. And granted, we have that in Urgot and Skyen and everything, but not like those are very, very different champions where the goal was literally just to bring people back from the dead.
Yeah, they're Frankenstein's monsters, basically.
Yeah.
Like mad scientist creations. Warwick is sort of more of a...
He is a mad scientist creation, though. That's Warwick's lore. He was worked on by Singed. Singed eventually killed him, and then he rose from the dead as the poison worked on his body, and then all he lusted for
but
was
the goal wasn't to bring him back from the dead, whereas for Skyen and Urgot, the goal was definitely to bring them back from the dead.
Yeah, Urgot is a corpse sewn together from different pieces, while Skyen is more of a traditional zombie kind of character, like reanimated the body and stitched together some shit. So, whereas Warwick is more of an augmented beast kind of mad scientist creation.
Kind of sounded like a side fun sciencey project that Cinch was working on. Like, hey, why don't I just shove some stuff into this guy and see what happens?
That was pretty much what the lore said.
I really liked that Singed entry. I guess when it came down to it, there were a couple parts that I took issue with, but I thought it was a really, really good way to go about Singed and sort of explore what that character is and what that's capable of, and a really cool way of introducing Warwick to things and everything. My one critique of that was ultimately it felt like this character was more interested in being like a really flowery writer, so to speak, than he was in actually like being a scientist. I by happenstance have edited a number of scientific papers and everything, and scientists do not write like that. Like,
No,
those crazy ones.
They avoid adverbs, they avoid all kinds of stuff and everything. Flowery language is like, no, they're very direct and to the point. Lots of passive voice, by necessity. And that was the one thing that was missing from that Singed entry. But otherwise, I thought that was really, really interesting and like generally well done.
Yeah,
They did a great job of like tying these two characters together, not just in passing through like you might read in a story. I mean, they introduced Warwick through Singed, which is a character who probably is going to get an update at some point in the future too. So
I hope so.
Yeah, I really like how they did that.
Yeah, and it's also Warwick's origin story has been really messy throughout League, because it used to be there was tied to Soraka, and she was the one who cursed him to become a werewolf kind of creature, and then they kind of tried to turn him into more of a Singed, to turn him into a monster, and then he was hunting Soraka for another reason. Now they just, no more Soraka. They don't want to have that thing in there. Yeah, because it was confusing him again in terms of what city-state does he belong to? Like, where does he belong in the lore? Is he a part of Soraka's lore, which is Ionian, or is he a part of Singed lore, which is
Ionian, that's right.
which is Son? So they've sort of segregated that part out and removed the whole thing about I want to eat her heart to become human again kind of thing.
It's only a matter of time before they tie her more closely to Aurelian's soul.
Yeah, I mean that's inevitable, I imagine.
But that's neither here nor there.
Are you 100? Are we at 100% positive that they won't try to tie I mean, I guess it makes more sense, obviously, to tie just Soraka. I keep wanting to say the Star Child to Aurelian's soul, just for obvious reasons, right? But he does talk about there being a girl, and he keeps hearing a girl's voice. So that that girl piece is still around in his lore.
I think that refers to his daughter or something like that. At least that's what I feel like the lore implies, that because he used to be a bad guy in Son with moral with a moral compass that was kind of tormenting his conscience, and it's sort of implied that
thought
he
he
had a
was a good
family who got
guy.
murdered. Yeah,
No,
he was a bad guy who wanted to be a good guy.
They keep going back to this redemption trope, and I'm kind of getting
Yeah.
sick of it. I mean, just like that's not the only thing that motivates people. And hey, congratulations, you turned him into Werewolf the Punisher.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like it's just for how interesting that Singed entry was. Like it was really disappointing to read Warwick's lore and everything, which is in better shape than it was previously. But in its current state, it just sort of feels like they leaned into a lot of cliches where they had so much fertile territory to explore.
Well, Dom, they really
Yeah.
go from Warwick the Punisher to like Banewick real fast, right? Like he's hunting, he just wants to destroy everything. He's pumped full of chemicals that make him stronger and heals him, and that type of thing. Like
That's another good comparison.
yeah. I mean, the idea behind Bane and what he's about doesn't really lean as well toward what Warwick is as the Punisher does, but it's still, I get those vibes off it. Like he's this genetically modified person with this hextech toxin flowing through his veins that heals him like Wolverine, and and then makes him more angry. Whenever he has any kind of emotion, he becomes angry immediately because of the toxins that are flowing through his veins.
Yeah.
And I'll grant that this is not exactly the most fertile territory that they can start with. I mean, they're working around the idea of a werewolf, and they did a few interesting things along the way. But it's still like the reality is that it's the werewolf archetype, and so that really narrows the focus. Unlike someone like Ivern, who it was a wide open net that they could start from scratch. It just still feels like they took, I don't know, the path of least resistance, or just they were really lazy about how they ended up going with this specific stuff. It might be because their writers are maybe overworked right now with just the amount of retconning that they're trying to do with Zahn and Piltover. But that doesn't mean I guess it's not really our job to sit and try and justify how the end product got to where it is and everything. And I just feel like it could have been a lot more. What it could have been, I'm not sure offhand.
I mean, I would, in terms of, he's a fucking werewolf, man. Like, I don't think it would have been, I think it would have been, might have been more interesting to, if you really want to go with the thing of the monster as a dark mirror of the man, why not have him revel in what he becomes? Like, all of a sudden he has all this power, and instead of being like, oh, I'm tortured and sad, and I'm gonna hunt down those who did it to me, he's more like, holy fuck, I'm a fucking werewolf. I can jump across chasms, and and love killing stuff. Like, turn him into more of a monster instead of trying to go for this sort of tragic, the poor suffering man beneath the monster. Every time I have to be super strong and awesome and rip things apart, I get sad. Like that's the thing, because they go for tragedy, and like you said, with a lot of characters, they just kind of go, okay, but this is a sad person who wants a redemption for a thing. It's Yasuo, it's Riven all over again. Like, they've got a lot of this stuff going. It would be nice to just have someone who is just, okay, I'm a monster. This is fucking awesome. I want to kill people.
Or he's a monster and he doesn't get all broody about it and everything. Like there's too much animal instinct overriding. And there might be a man in there that keeps questioning if what the decisions are, but he just doesn't have what it takes to overpower that instinct yet. And maybe Warwick's overarching narrative could have actually been the journey to try to figure out how to regain more of his humanity. But the story as presented to me screams like he has a lot of that humanity still within him, and he's just sort of pretending like he can't, like he doesn't have it.
Yeah, it's sort of messy. I think it lacks definition, I think, as a character against the canvas of all the other characters that are on League. The whole thing about sad man suffers tragedy, now seeks revenge, that's kind of bland as these things go.
Do you think you mentioned humanity, Dom, and I was going to say, do you think this is just Riot's way of humanizing him and trying to make you connect more closely to him, rather than giving you some kind of crazy werebeast? You now might feel more connected to him because he has the tragedy. I know that's kind of what the trope goes for, right? To make you connect to the character in one way or another by using your personal life experiences to draw inspiration or whatever it may be.
Do we need to connect to the character?
But that's where I was
Like,
going to.
Can't there be characters that are just like, you know what, this is entertaining as fuck to watch and everything? Like, he doesn't represent me. Like, I don't see any of myself in here, but that doesn't mean it makes for bad spectacle.
Sure.
Yeah.
I love the piece of the story, right, where, like we said, Singe takes him off the streets and just starts fucking working on him and telling him, this pain, you have to work through the pain, you have to have the pain, it's gonna make you who you are, and I like that. But couldn't there have been some point where he just wakes up and then he's a fucking animal? Like, I think I'm just probably repeating what Skyen said. He's just an animal. He's just killing. He's just he now wants to just control the streets of Zaun and be that underlying terror that is in the garbage pit or the bottom half of Zaun or whatever it is, you know what I mean? He he doesn't need to go seek revenge on Singe. I know, without the little piece in the back of his head that is saying, "Oh, there's a girl talking to me and I need to figure out what these voices are saying and why am I human and why am I this way?" Like, you don't need that. You're just a fucking killing machine. You thirst for blood and that's all you want.
And too much of that comes from this early idea that he tried to be someone different, like he was a bad man, and then he tried to become good, and then because he tried to become good, he got yanked off the street and turned into this monster. But hey, now I'm gonna keep trying to be good and everything. I mean, like there's so much tied up in what was really just like a 2-sentence thing. But that's what they end up going back to, even though the character that's the only thing he can remember about himself is that he was bad and he tried to be good, and just like,
yeah, I mean, it's a thing that, like Adam said, it's absolutely a ploy by the writer to make the character someone who's sympathetic, someone who you identify with, someone who can go, oh, that's a tragic story. I hope things turn out okay for him. But the thing I have with that is that the same thing with Jinx. Now, she's no longer just crazy. There's a passage in her story now that implies that, she used to be a bright young inventor hope who suffered some sort of unknown tragedy and went through it and came out on the other side crazy. And again, it's that thing where Jinx does not need to have a tragic backstory to be interesting or fun or just a good character to deal with, because she's fun because she's fucking crazy and she blows shit up and she doesn't give a shit. There doesn't have to be a sad backstory. And it's the same with Ivern. It's like, why is he a Viking guy who used to murder people and then he chops down a tree for something? Like, why couldn't he just be the Forest Greenfather from the start? Why could that not just be who he is? What does having him be a sad Viking guy who used to be evil add to him? Riot keeps going for tragedy, and it kind of bothers me.
The bigger issue there is because they keep going for tragedy, but they don't want to actually show us the tragedy. They just want to tell us tragedy happened. Believe us when we tell you that there was this tragedy, and now look at the consequences of all this tragedy that we're not going to show you. We're going to tell you about it, but we're not going to show you any of this stuff going on and everything.
Tell, don't show is Riot's philosophy for a lot of the writing that they do, and it hurts it a lot.
Frustrating.
Because so much of it is people say this happened, people say that happened, and once upon a time, but there's no, okay, we're supposed to believe that this happened, but couldn't you just tell us the story of how it happened instead of saying, people said that once upon a time and there was a man who... They do that a lot, and it's a flaw, I think, in their writing.
It would frustrate me less if we didn't get tidbits of lore as infrequently as we currently do and everything. There was the Gangplank, Misfortune, Twisted Fate, Grave story and everything. That was season 5 at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, that was so long ago, and we've heard nothing about that. And they did such a good job of tying all these other champions, and that's cool, and that's really exciting. And then they don't do anything with it. It's such a big canvas that they're working with, and they just do little dots here and there. And I kind of wonder what would happen if they just said, you know what, run wild, writers. We've got so much that we can work with and everything, collaborate with one another and everything. Stuff is going to have to go through editorial approval and all that type of stuff. But you know what? Write the stories about the champions you want to write about. Don't write about Zaun just because we're doing a Zaun event.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder about that. It's the thing I've been arguing that Riot should do much more, is just some kind of regular content output, and it doesn't have to be fucking perfect, because that's Riot's problem always, is that they look at it and no, but we could make it better, and we could improve here, and we could fix that, and we could make it the best thing possible for players. And God, I love them for having that attitude, but sometimes it just leaves them like in a state where they work on something for months and months and months, and then after they've worked on it too much, they fall out of love with it, and then they don't release release it because they feel like, okay, but now it's never going to be good enough. And then all they tell us is we were working on this thing and you're never going to see it and there's never going to be anything. And it's, sometimes I just want them to let go and just publish shit. Publish some comics, do some short stories, some more songs, music videos, let people run wild. And then if something goes horribly wrong, retcon it. That's what Marvel and DC have been doing for 50 years. And it's fine. You can do that. You can have a sustainable, connected universe that people identify with without having each individual piece of it be perfect.
I remember a bunch of Riot's writing team or creative team, I should say, getting really defensive on Twitter when the Overwatch comic came out right around Christmas.
Oh yeah.
And people kept saying, "No, Riot, you need to do this type of thing. You need to do this. This is really exciting. Why aren't you doing this?" And they're like, "Didn't we just do this with Camille and everything?" I'm like, "No, you missed the point. Camille was a specifically timed event for new content that you were releasing." And I didn't read the Overwatch comic because I don't play that game, but my understanding of it was just stories of a handful of characters that were already existing or
it was such a short comic, Dom. Like it was what, 4 maybe 5 not panels but pages of panels, and it was
a Christmas thing.
It was just a very short Christmas thing. She stole an item, found out that the other person tried to steal the item, and then it showed what the Christmas was like as they walked around and gave Christmas presents out to each of the families.
But that's world building. Yeah, that's the thing they need, is to have just, okay, what the hell is Ezreal doing right now? Because he's off having adventures that we don't get to see because no one at Riot bothers telling us those stories. And that's the thing of that Overwatch and Team Fortress 2 especially have gotten so right about this, is they just release stories that have, sometimes they have some relation to in-game events that are going on. Otherwise, at times it's just, this is what this guy is up to right now, and this is what this guy was doing before we saw him in the game, that don't have to really to connect to a lot. And every time Overwatch releases like anything, new voice lines, there's a huge outpouring of fan theories and engagement and fan art, and like the fans love this shit because Overwatch does a good job of making the characters into relatable characters, where League of Legends has all of these archetypes running around with not a lot of discernible personality.
That's a good way of putting it. Like you have all these characters and you want to relate to them, and maybe you do in some respect one way or the other, but the reality is we don't know enough about any of them. We don't know anything about the overwhelming majority of the characters in this game.
Yeah.
I just know that I'm a tortured artist. I come here twice a week and do a podcast with you guys, and that's why
you have a haunted past.
Gym. I do have a haunted past. I used to podcast with 3 other assholes. and
then something happened to them. Tragedy struck.
And now you podcast with 3 different assholes, and it's very sad.
Right. The curtain fell, and then the curtain reopened later with a whole new cast, you see. So, really bad Jin joke there. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's what you were going for.
I had no idea. But
see, you guys don't know enough about the champions that you don't know why Jin is a tortured artist, right?
Jin was such again, the thing where they said they put out so much information about he's this notorious serial killer, and he's done all these things, and people are scared of him, and they speak of him as a demon, and Zed and Shen are really hunting him, and they have to work together, and they show us fuck all. Like, they just tell us that this is the thing that's happening and going on, and they're moving on to next champion.
You know, you spoke of Ezreal. I think that would be pretty cool. I liked the 2015 event where they did with the Bilgewater. And I don't need something that grandiose, right? Like, I don't need you to give me icons in the game. I don't need you to give me game modes and all that shit to do it. But, like, little things, hopefully with the new client, that they can do these type of things, maybe change the way the client looks to match the faction, the player, like the champion's coming from, to give you some kind of, like, more immersion. And doing something where you're releasing a comic, hey, Ezreal is out here, and Ezreal is out, exploring, kind of like Reno Jackson from Hearthstone. He's exploring a temple, and he hit something, and now he's unleashed a beast like Azir into the world, or whatever it is. And then suddenly we have Azir, and now we are talking about Azir and his past, and we're learning all about it because Ezreal's walked through the tomb. I'm only using it because it's the only person I can think of that was kind of like, or Skarner, I probably is the better one, who was imprisoned and released. But still, like, those things are cool. I like those things. I read them or watch them or whatever. Udyr when he got his legendary skin, I liked that comic. I thought that was very engaging and fun. Taric was really cool. Like, we had a lot of good things to say about Taric's lore and the way they led up to it.
The Braum comic way back when was really, really fun. Like, really engaging. It was a really good story.
Yeah.
And then what have we seen of Braum since then?
Yeah, and the thing that bothers me the most, though, is that the story content they do put out, champions almost never interact. Like, almost never. Like, Singed and Warwick have... Singed is such an integral part of Warwick's backstory, but in his color story, he doesn't show up. He doesn't show up in most of his lore. He only really shows up, Sin made Warwick, and then Warwick went off. And
Warwick's lore didn't even go, and I'm going to find... Like, at no point did it even say, I'm going to find the guy that did this to me.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't even bring that up. He mentions Singed, and then it just seems like, yeah, but he's down with what happened.
Yeah,
he's cool with it.
The only champion interaction in a color story that I've seen so far is Mundo's new story, where he briefly runs into Echo, and Echo runs away from him, and that's all that happens. Like, but the way you characterize characters in a story is you bounce them off each other. Like, this is the thing that made the Avengers so great: is what happens when you put Bruce Banner and Tony Stark in a room. Turns out they're bros. What happens when you put them in a room with Captain America? Turns out they fucking hate each other's guts. That's what made those things good. Is that you bounce these great, huge archetypes of each other and personality emerges, but League never does that. They never bounce their characters off each other. That's what was so great about the Bilgewater event.
Yeah.
We finally got to see Graves and TF actually work out their shit.
And that was cool. And then also we got to see how they bounced off of Gangplank on top of everything else that was going on. I mean, like, that was I don't know, a curve to that story that they really didn't have to take for Twisted Fate and Graves specifically. But, you know, I mean, it really added a lot along the way there.
And that led up to the Tom Kent release soon after, didn't
Yeah.
it? They reshaped. Was not Piltover? Where the hell?
Bilgewater.
Bilgewater.
Or was
Yeah,
Malawi around
and
that
then
time?
Kench was also kind of connected to some Shadow Isles stuff that was going on at the time. I think it's a long time ago. I don't really remember.
Was it? Well, you guys talk. I'll find out. Champion.
I have no. I know there was a mention of Alawi.
Yeah.
She was
his
in
fortune
there.
story around that time. I don't remember when Alawi was released though.
No, she turned up as like a priestess who was briefly in one of the stories, I think.
Right.
So Tom
yeah,
Kent-
that was her first mention.
Thresh was tied into it at some point too.
Tom Kent was released 7/9/2015. Alawi was 11/24/2015. So Tom Kent was released 4 months before Alawi was.
Who would you guys say is League of Legends' signature champion or flagship champion?
Rise.
Like, God, it's going to be Rise, isn't it?
At this point, it's Rise or Tryndamere.
So technically,
But probably
Katarina has appeared in the most media content, if I'm recalling correctly. Somebody looked into that a while ago. So, but Rise is also a good answer there. In my mind, like, figure out who their 5 most important champions are or whatever is within their eyes, and then maybe don't let the new writers come in and touch those. But what brand could have a bunch of stories told about him, and like there are so many different champions that have such little lore, and that could be really, really good proving grounds for the new writers and everything, and really good ways of just engaging the community with new lore. Along that
it's
point.
so weird that Riot will put out 10 patches and there are bugs in them, and they're fine with that. They fix them as they go, and they'll rebalance the champion and rework them, and then they'll take the rework back. And like, they're so willing to experiment and be open a lot of the times with their game balance, but when it comes to their lore, when it comes to the media they put out, it's perfect or not at all. And it bothers me. Just Riot, just loosen up, god damn it.
And like,
unclench your buttholes, shit some lore on
for
us.
the listeners, like, we're not being really critical or shitting all over them because we like hate what's gone on and everything. It's because, like, we genuinely want to see more, and we hate that we haven't gotten enough of it and everything. Like, they're doing, we by and large, criticism aside, it's just like we want to see the best content we can see, but like we also need to start seeing more of the content and everything. How many comic books would just totally be dead if they maintain the type of release schedule that from a creative content standpoint that Riot does.
Yeah, and I mean, even again going back to Marvel, what Marvel has been doing like the past half a decade or so is that they've been reworking all of their like old roster of characters and turning them into, like, Hulk has become Korean in a certain timeline. Miss Marvel is a Muslim, and they've gone a Black Iron Man who's a woman also. Like, they've done all these experiments in the back end, and anytime they don't work, like, but they try it for a good long while, no one engages with it. They just kill it and say that was an alternate universe, doesn't matter anymore, and then they try a new thing, and then the moment something cool breaks through, like for instance the new Ms. Marvel, who's become very popular, and the Miles Morales Black Spider-Man guy, Then they start bringing them into the main canon and saying, okay, now this stuff is going to matter. And eventually, the thinking is that their plan is to bring them into the movies to appeal to a more worldwide audience than just the American one. And like that's a model that Riot could say, okay, so clearly this works. We'll release some low-level experimental stuff. That's maybe it's just some comics or something, or maybe it's just some short stories. And if people engage with it, if they find it great, then we can develop on it. If not, we'll just retire it and say that this is old canon. That is like you can retcon shit. It's not a irretractable act to publish something.
They already do that. You know, I mean, like they already retcon a whole bunch of things anyway. It's like they're not shy about retconning. They're shy about releasing content that they might have to retcon later.
Yeah. Bothersome. Were we talking about Warwick at some point? I think we were.
By the way, just to fall back, the new Gangplank was released on July 22nd, 2015. So it was 1 month later that Tom Kench came out.
Yeah.
Which was part of the Burning Tides event, or whatever you want to call it. Yes, it was the store for the Burning Tides. So yeah. There you go. Now a little league history. And hey, going back to Warwick, because I wanted to bring this point up before. And we were talking about
before me and
things
Dom went off.
Yeah, shit happens. You know what? Hopefully people enjoy
Punch
it.
got in there.
Dom, want to start our own podcast where we just talk about this shit all the time and can leave Adam
Sure,
alone?
Dom would be in.
Thought
If he had
about
more
it.
time.
There was a lore podcast out there for a little while. I don't know if they're still kicking, but
So in Warwick's lore, he talks, or he wakes up, he goes and he finds a cave like any wild animal would, I guess, and then he starts to hunt. And they talk about him hunting a priestess of the Glorious Evolved. Now, Victor got new lore, right?
Yeah.
What is the Glorious Evolved?
He has become a sort of cult figure because he went to Son to try and figure out how to fix humanity of all his problems. And he started help. If people came to his house with a broken leg, he'd replace it with a mechanical one and save their lives and give them new lungs and all kinds of shit. And as he became less and less human and retreated more and more from humanity, the people he had helped sort of started thinking of him as a sort of messianic figure and kind of started worshiping him. And now there's this cult running around Son that worships Victor and believes in his glorious evolution. And that I think that's who he murdered there.
See, I think it would be pretty cool if they added more of that into it. And like that's where we start tying lore together, right?
Exactly.
Like here's a feral rabid creature that is part hex tech. Well, is this an alternate piece of the Glorious Evolved? Is this an alternate god? Maybe people start worshiping that rather than Warwick, and then we have some kind of conflict inside of the Glorious Evolved, and then you can build a story off that. I mean, that and that's not perfect by any means because it's off the top of my head, but that's just one way to start connecting storylines together.
Yeah,
And
there's a million ways.
Passively mention it in the lore, like, all right, it attacked a gloriously evolved member of.
They add little tidbits in there, but like we've been saying, they just never expand.
They never
on them.
execute on any of it.
they like to do the little, hey, let's see if anybody catches this type of stuff. And it happens a lot in the splash arts.
Yeah.
You'll
And then
you'll
people
see,
on Reddit will go back later and say, "Oh, it was in the splash art the whole time."
yeah, or you'll catch astronaut Timo in the Star Guardian, one of the Star Guardian skins or something like that, and everything. And that stuff is really fun and really cool and everything. But you don't have to be so covert with all the lore stuff that's going on. You know what? Be heavy-handed. Like, go to town on some of this shit.
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason I started the Star Guardian webcomic that I'm working on is it's kind of just to kind of rub it in their faces that it doesn't have to be more complicated than Star Guardians are now in high school. Do a generic anime story about them. Like,
So did you
cut it from whole cloth. Just copy paste your characters into it.
Did
it's
you do
fine.
a Sailor Moon thing with the star? I haven't read it yet. I know it's out there. I can read it right now because I'm a
Yeah.
Patreon subscriber.
Yeah, you can read it even if you aren't. It's absolutely for free.
Right.
But yeah,
So
it's
did
just
you
this-
copy and paste like the Sailor Moon type thing with
Basically,
the
just the
character?
standard generic anime high school kind of setup. That's all I'm doing is kind of going through tropes from that and just putting Star Guardians in it and some void creatures as the enemies.
I really hope that you're going back and doing your homework and like watching old Sailor Moon comics and
Oh,
other
yeah.
animes to get an idea of how the Japanese people feel that the high school girl talks inside college.
Oh yeah, I remember the dub. Oh god.
And I hope there's a lot of, like totally right. The California.
Yeah,
girl.
I'll add that in. I'll definitely get on that.
You know what we haven't talked about at all with respect to Warwick?
Anything?
The video.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Oh,
I like
Which
yeah.
that.
seems for all intents and purposes, that seems like it's part of the lore canon and everything. And hey, do more of that stuff, right? And everything. That video
was
was
awesome.
really, really cool. I like that video so much better than the actual Warwick champion story.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like
That shows what kind of character is he, what does he do, how does he react. It shows him reacting to the blood on the hand of one
That was
character, and
perfect.
that sends him into a range. Like that was so well done, I thought.
yeah.
And
Is
that's
there
all
anything else?
No, there's not really too much else to say about that. I just think I like those type of things when they release those. I like those teasers. I hate announcements of announcements. I know I did those for a long time, right? Like old listeners will joke about that. But like the announcers, they post like a picture of something. What they do it just recently for the Blood Moon skins. And they were like, everyone's like, oh, that's got to be Jin because that's Jin's gun. Like, I just give me the full Monty, right? Just show me everything. Show me that video because I watched that video twice. And like Skyen said, that is the piece that sticks out in my mind the most. So the guy cuts his hand, looks out the window, and Warwick is, I think he's holding a guy in his left arm, and he smells it, and you see the Hex Tech gears or whatever start pumping in his back, and he howls and turns red. I'm like, oh yeah, he fucking smelling blood. That's awesome. And he's running.
I mean,
It
not
made
just
me
that. Think
pumped.
about how much we learned about Zon from that video.
Yeah.
Like how crime works in Zon and everything, and like even just sort of the architecture of that part of the whole region. Like we learned so much from that, and we haven't gotten any of that from at least the stories that I've read.
Yeah, because they're absolutely terrible at describing environments and situations. I got off on a long rant about everything I thought was wrong with the Jinx story, and one of the things I thought was just infuriating was at some point during Jinx's color story, she steals a vehicle called a Ring Rider. But at no point during the story does the author bother to explain to us what the fuck a Ring Rider is. He just says she saw a Ring Rider guarded by some people, and she jumped on the saddle and pulled the knobs, and the thing began to what the fuck? There was no
What is the
description
thing?
of what it is. It doesn't say if it flies or it drives. It doesn't say if it's a boat. It doesn't say if it has like a cockpit or if it has any kind of propulsion mechanism. Is it jet powered? What the fuck is the thing?
Skyen
But they
is
just
about to
say
Dr. Seuss
Ring
this shit
Rider
right now.
as though it means something to us. And they do this in every single color story. There's all this internal jargon from the League of Legends universe that they expect us to just go, oh, that's probably what they say in League World, without ever explaining to us what the fuck is a sump snipe, what the hell is the cult of the glorious evolved. Like, we can figure out it's got something to do with Victor, but no one tells us shit. They tease us with this massive world that clearly the writers have thought out and built, but they never ever let us in. They never show us, they never explain it to us, and that's just, it gets me angry because it's bad writing. Ah!
So did you know in Warwick's old lore, he used to be friends with Singed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's for those of you out there who didn't read the old lore.
Weren't Singed,
I didn't read
Warwick,
the old
and Mundo all like kind of
Buddy.
science bros?
Something like that, I think, yeah.
Well, yeah, they were buddy. The old lore, they were buddy, and he had to pull three components together: silver, balefire, direwolf, and the heart of the celestial being. And I guess everything went wrong, and he became the werewolf, right? And that's why he's tracking down the Star Child.
He's always been werewolf guy to me. I didn't really feel the need to look into his lore. Like, oh, he's the wolf guy. Yeah.
But after
got
watching that video, you felt the need to look in his lore, right?
Well, the video told me much more than the lore did. But yeah, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
it actually did compel me to do some poking around in there.
The Singed story and the video tell you more.
Yeah, those two
than
things together.
than the other two things,
Those are
Yeah.
good.
which is cool. Like I really like that. When it all comes down to it, like it's really nice seeing things tied together in that regard and everything. Just do more.
Do more with it.
Yeah. I mean, it is a little sort of petulant to just go, you're doing stuff, but it's not enough. We want more. But it's just, they keep doing just enough to get us interested and then not enough to sate it at all.
I hope
Yeah.
you guys are enjoying the shit on Riot's lore team for a half an hour.
Oh, this is their favorite episode.
If any
I'm
of them
sure.
are listening, I'm very sorry, but seriously, up your game.
We're we're passionate. Like, we're not critical because we think you're trying to do a bad job or mailing it in or anything. It's just like we're passionate. We want to see more. We're definitely not the only fans who feel this way. I mean, I think there's a lot more interest in the lore than people are inclined to believe in that type of stuff. Just because a lot of people think. Or it might be easy to assume that people don't want to go and read a whole bunch of extra stuff and everything, but I think people do. There is interest, and it might not be that every single champion has the exact same interest level and everything. But I would kill for really good, interesting lore for Alistar.
I knew it was coming.
I wouldn't kill for it, but I would love to have that. I mean, he's one of my favorite champions, and his lore is so bad. His lore is so bad.
Yeah,
He's bull guy.
Yeah, I mean, he's literally just bull
He's a big
guy.
bull guy.
Yeah, he's a minotaur, and that's about all there is to him. I mean, I've heard, this is rumors, nothing I've been able to verify. I've heard rumors that the narrative team in Riot they've had trouble getting their projects off the ground because everything has been prioritized towards the client, towards champion updates, towards all the technical sides of it. So in terms of finding space in the League of Legends news cycle to release lore stuff, they've had a lot of trouble, and that might be part of the reason why they're trying to shove so much into the short stories right now, is that they just can't get it out anywhere else. That's rumors, but it makes sense that because so much other shit has been put on the back burner with all the updating that they've been doing to the back end of the client and the tech and everything, and how much attention they've wanted people to pay to that might be part of the reason why lore has been so silent for so long, is because there simply wasn't resources and time to put it out.
I was gonna say, just real quick, there's likely something to that. I'm not gonna say it's 100% confirmed because I don't know either. But I know when our podcast made it into the client at one point in time, right? We had that question and answer. We were in the client for like 18 hours and then got kicked out, right? Like that's how fast the news cycle is moving with inside Riot right now.
I guess what frustrates me is that they let their art team really explore a lot of different boundaries with whatever they're interested in doing for champion skins. Dreadnova Gangplank. It's not like Gangplank really needed a new skin or anything, but they said, you know what, this is some fertile territory. We like this concept for it, or one artist, or however it worked out. It's like, I'm gonna go for this. Like, can I get the buy-in? And they don't give that. It seems like they don't give that same buy-in or encouragement to the content team.
Yeah,
That's
the content team
looking
doesn't
in,
earn
but
the money in the same way the skins team does. So
that's fair.
I mean, maybe there's a financial consideration there. I don't know.
That's got to be why they tie so much of the lore that I did put into those large events like Shurima and Gangplank. I already forgot the name of that thing.
Burning Tides.
That event. Fair. Burning Tides, thank you. Because they release content with the flood of lore into it, and they can't dedicate a whole ton of resources and get no payoff for it.
Then at a certain point, then I'm like, I start to wonder, like, why would you really want to keep working for a place like Riot as a writer if you're not going to get the encourament or support you need to do your job well?
Yeah, that's not stopping them from releasing more short stories.
Weren't there a bunch of writers who left Riot fairly recently? I think I heard something about a lot of writers kind of leaving, and then they had to replace them with a bunch of new people. Was that a thing? Am I imagining this?
Yeah, you might be imagining it. It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I love you, Riot, and everything, but I'm sure they have a decent turnover rate when it comes to specific pieces of their,
Yeah, most big companies probably do.
Right.
I mean, they've been pretty upfront with it. Like, it can be a difficult place for people just because everybody is so passionate and enthusiastic that it's hard to have the loudest voice in the room.
I can imagine.
Because everybody has really loud voices, and if you're just not inclined to try to be the loudest voice in the room, it's really easy to get overlooked for stuff. And I work with a number of writers. Writers aren't always the loudest people. A lot of people are really inclined to just be quiet and do their jobs the way they want to, but they're not always going to just speak up for the sake of speaking up.
That might be part of it, because I've been wondering why lore seems to have been such a low priority for Riot for their game when they have so many characters and they want us to care about them. They have to tell us something about who they are.
It's easily one of the biggest and most open canvases in video game and everything in video games. I mean, like, what do we really know about Runeterra?
Bugger all.
Yeah. I mean,
Well,
you think about stuff like Mass Effect or Gears of War or so many other things where, grand scheme of things, we don't know that much about those worlds either and everything, but we've seen at least pretty concise and linear stories there. Whereas League it's so wide open, and there's so many different areas that people could go and play with.
Yeah, I wonder why they haven't put out a novel at some point. Like that seems like the natural place if you want a world build, if you want to really get a lot of that out there. Novel,
it
seems like the thing to go.
Right?
So Blizzard has put out fucking novels for their stories, and they
Halo.
have no games with good lore at all.
Halo's put out novels. Gears
Yeah.
of War. I think there are novels for that and everything. I'm sure I know Mass Effect's done comics. I mean, it's sort of
And novels, yeah.
what's the worst that happens? It doesn't sell. So then, hey, okay, you've eliminated that as an option for delivering creative content. But now you know.
Oh, come on. That would sell like hot.
No, I think it would sell like hot.
A League of Legends comic series would, like, you could sell that fucking anywhere on the planet.
Yeah,
the Chinese would go wild for it.
Yeah, I think it would go over like gangbusters, but they're hesitant to go that route. But they're instead they'll make a board game.
Yes.
Which is really
Out of
cool, and I'm
nowhere.
glad they did it. But it's sort of like you have all this lore and stuff you could do, but you decide to go the route of making a board game.
Yeah, with its own lore.
Yeah,
I'm not going to put words in anyone's mouths or anything, but I don't, it's not even the right saying to use for that, but like I don't want to assume, right? Like, I just don't want to assume what's going on at Riot. I don't know why stuff is getting pushed out slowly. I don't know why we're getting it. We're getting lore and we get lore in big patches, and then it takes a few months and we get some more. But I do know that they are continually working on it because Rioters have come to the boards and said, like, for summoner spells, they're rewriting the lore for the summoner spells, and they said they already have a piece of it wrote. They just don't have it, completely finalized. Like the summoners are completely gone, so they're going to change. They're still going to be called summoner spells, but summoner spells are going to be something different. So we have an idea why you get to use them in game. And so we know that lore is being worked on all the time. But like this, trying to shift gears here, this is the Warwick podcast, and we've got like 12 to 15 minutes of talking about Warwick, and I think it might be a good idea here the last 15 minutes or so to talk more about the aesthetics of Warwick, because you touched on it in the very beginning with his splash art.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that they're really focusing on the hex tech pieces, they're focusing on the green, they're focusing on the claws and whatnot, but looking at the splash art, looking at Warwick in game, like everything, like say something good about Riot for right now. It's something good.
Yeah.
Like, everything they've done with the character model and the way he runs and everything in game is fantastic. He feels like a dog.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what I wanted.
He looks amazing in motion.
Wanted to be a dog, and I am a dog.
the worst parts of playing Warwick now are when you don't have the movement speed that makes him do all the fun, cool stuff.
Yeah.
Like, so kind of at the start of the game when a lot of people are not hunted or like right when you get out of base and that type of stuff, when you're not moving faster and faster because you're closing in on the target, that's the only time that it's really not fun to play that champion and everything. And to me, that's really successful because that incentivizes you to get in position where you can do all of the really, really fun stuff.
Yeah,
I think the rework was a resounding success in that case, in that they kept Warwick's identity, but they still made him feel incredibly fresh, and it was compounded on what he was, right? Warwick was the werewolf that runs around and supposedly hunts people, but he always did it walking around with two giant giant muscular arms and walking on two legs. Well, now he's actually, a feral beast running at high speed towards his target and before he leaps on them. It looks fantastic.
The leap is the best addition to him, I think, in terms of delivering that fantasy of just jumping in and just this target, fuck you in particular.
Adam got outplayed by an Azir so many times.
I was so mad. That Azir had to have been on better ping than me, or just better than me. I won't say he's better than me. He's
or
on better ping than me. He fucking dropped his wall the moment I jumped at him, and it pushed me off every single time.
Yeah, like, I don't know if the guy just had the timing down or was really good at getting that snap cast, but because there's a delay and the wall casts a little bit behind Azir, Adam would always land on Azir, and then
that's
at
what
that
it
point,
was. It's because it fucking came from behind, right? I forget it does that.
So at that point, he's now vulnerable to crowd control, and like 3 different times, he just got knocked right out of the suppression.
Well,
but everything leading up to that was great.
Yeah.
Oh, every time. You
And
saw
then
my
Koto.
you saw my Warwick, and you laughed at me when I leveled the wrong ability like 16 times throughout the game.
I sure did. I was, just put a point here and a point in here, and W feels pretty good, and then it worked out in the end. So who cares?
Yeah, right. A little fun tidbit: we went. It was like the 16th of this month last year that DeClaude and I went out to Riot and got to see all the the awesome stuff and talk to all the rioters and all that. And I can talk about it now because the champion's released, but we got to see pieces of Warwick and got to see some of like the art and whatnot when we were out there. So
wow.
It's fun to know that he was in works for a year prior to that.
Wow.
How did they have the aesthetics done at that point? Was that sort of work in progress? You just kind of saw
it was all very much still a work in progress, everything. But that you saw, if you look at him how he is now with the long arms and long legs and hunched over on one hand, that type of hand. That's the type, like not the splash art, but you get what I mean. Like that type of thing was already in the works to understand they wanted to be long, lengthy, and more dog-like or wolf-like than he was previously.
Yeah, because before he was just a dude with fur, like just a guy with big arms and fur. The thing I really like about the new Warwick is the way they in conjunction, I think, with the release of Aurelian Sol, they added a lot of new tech to the game to allow tails to kind of follow and trace
He's
around
got a very
behind.
fluffy tail.
Yeah, and they've implemented that with Ari and they've implemented that with other champions who have like things that flow behind them. But with Warwick, I think they've applied it to his whole, like almost his whole body, the way he turns when you turn him, and it looks so good in motion. I really do
God.
I always give props to Riot animators because they always get it right.
Can he chase his tail if you move around in a circle?
Oh
you try
God,
that?
I hope so. With enough moves.
Did you try that, Adam?
Wait, does he chase his tail?
Yeah, if you move around in a circle, does
I
it
never
look like
tried
he's
that.
chasing his tail?
I press R1. I like to press Control 1 because he's a good little puppy. He sits and he always play. He's a good little puppy. That's my puppy
And if you
voice,
go and
by
you
the
look
way.
at the old model and everything, the tail was like I honestly forgot he
tail?
even had a tail.
Oh, yeah.
He does, but it looks, it's kind of like a short leg, is what it really
Basically,
is.
it's just a toothpick on his ass.
And whatever. The game was really, really, really young when Warwick came out and everything, so he was certainly in need of an update. And visually, I think he did it. They did it justice.
Big props
Yeah.
to Riot for updating the graphics before World of Warcraft upgraded before Blizzard upgraded World of Warcraft graphics. So big props there because the game. I went back. I love going back and watching some of the old VODs. Not so much watching, but just kind of peeking at them because I'm like, I actually watched professional League of Legends when it looked like this. When the summoner spell Flash was this big blinding pillar of light that came off the champion when you flashed. I'm like, holy shit, we watched this and we liked this and we thought this was going to be the next big thing. And I mean, obviously it was, but my God, it looked bad.
Yeah.
Which is the standout skin for you guys? Because Warwick's fun to talk about because he's got a whole bunch of skins, going with it. Ivern had the one, Yorick only had a couple. But Warwick's got a whole bunch of skins.
I would probably Firefang would be the standout skin. I haven't seen it in game yet, but
I've got that one.
I
could show you.
I like Hyena a lot
Yeah,
because it has an engine on the back.
Hyena was like a really, really, really well done one. I was sitting on the skin shard for that for forever because I couldn't decide if I wanted to get it. It was a good old Warwick skin and everything, but I never play the champion and I wasn't that excited about it, as far as like I'll hang on to it unless I really need it to get something better. And then when they did the update, I was sitting on enough orange essence that like, you know what, that skin just looks baller. On the chance I get him in an ARAM or some shit, I want to have that available.
Well, speaking of skins, this would be good for Skyen. If you guys looked at Feral Warwick, at least the splash for it, Feral Warwick hits almost every piece of what this lore talks about when it comes to how Warwick should look, because they even say they strap a metal arm onto him, and he's got a fucking metal claw on his right hand arm now, rather than like a claw hand hybrid, right? And he's got he's torn to pieces. He's wearing pants. He just kind of looks more of like that werewolf style where he blew out of his clothes and now he's out there. Like maybe if you made this his base model, you ditch the helmet, right? But this is my favorite skin so far, just because I think this looks the most feral and most fierce of the Warwick skins, and that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, it's much more of an immediately after Singed has operated on him kind of look. Like he just burst out of the laboratory, whereas the base skin right now is more of a thing of he's been around Sawn for a few years and somehow got someone to make him custom gloves for his claws and little fingernail things.
Well, speaking of custom gloves, if you play Big Bad Warwick, he wears an oven mitt.
Yeah. I was gonna bring that up if you didn't. Shout out to Big Bad Warwick when you played that the other day. Like, that's so cool. He's got an oven mitt on. LOL.
I still need to see Earthwick.
Yeah, really. Because that was a big skin when it came out.
I'm not sure I like the way they changed it. Because it used to be that he was literally wearing Earth, like very explicitly wearing Earth. Now it's more like he's kind of got a Earth head on top of his own head and some blue, like a blue bodysuit, and that's kind of it. It doesn't really look like he's wearing Earth as a cape or a trophy.
Yeah, I haven't
skin.
seen it in game.
It's more like a costume than actually the skin of the guy he murdered.
I mean, the splash kind of makes it look like he's wearing Earth, kind of.
Yeah,
but
I can see that. He does look like, because I mean it's stitched together, right? Like, but it wouldn't really.
Yeah, the stitching,
around his
the headdress, but you can still see his bulging muscles through the skin. So
of course you have to.
You gotta figure they're gonna re-release that one at some point. Like,
I think it's a little lackluster for what it's supposed to be.
But still, like the player, I mean, that came out in 2010. Think about where the player base is now relative to that. Like that, it just means the overwhelming majority of the players in this game didn't even have a chance to pick it up. I mean, I bet like even half.
It's a banner. It's like it's a badge. Like I've been here since the beginning.
Yeah, they did really re-release Championship Ribbon though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And definitely not Blitzcrank and all that type of stuff.
Right. They said I remember that because they said they weren't going to release the legacy skins, and then they re-released them.
Yeah.
Yeah, because basically they used to have X thousand players, and now they have 100 million, and a lot of people weren't happy about not having access.
Or Kitty Cat Katarina. I can remember that forever. Everybody and their brother wanted Kitty Cat Katarina, and they finally released her.
I bought it just because I was like, okay, well, they're doing it this one time. I don't know what's going to happen again and everything. I don't play this champion, but
someday
I'm going to have it anyway.
Support Cat someday.
Support Cat. Well, the way this game's changing, who knows? Assassin supports might be the next meta.
And Dom is out at that point. See you.
I'm not very good at assassins.
Well, anything else to add to Warwick?
Lots, but maybe we shouldn't be ranting about the lore anymore.
That's fair. We did spend 45 minutes on the lore.
Thank you for that, by the way.
Keep doing that. Well, I like ranting about it too. This is
the last podcast, just so you guys know, turned into a lore rant as well.
Yeah.
This seems to happen when Dom and I sit down to chat about
it that way. So.
Well, I'm sorry for any rioters who made it this far. If you're still listening, because I know a lot of you do listen.
We like what you're doing. We like your work. We really do. We just
want
more.
To do more of it. That's pretty much our point.
Do more work for the same pay. That's the way, the American way.
Well, Start a fucking Patreon. That's what I'm doing.
They do, by all accounts, they do a bunch of work and then they just don't release it. I mean, just show us the fruits of your labor. Come on.
It's the best pickup line ever.
Thanks for sitting and listening to this podcast, Punch. It's been great.
It was a fun ride.
All right, I think I'm going to call it there. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Patreon.com/TForce Network. Garen and Akali. By the way, I've heard if you want to learn about Garen, like even if you have the minute feeling that like this little inkling of playing Garen, we have I want to say he's Masters Garen or previously Masters Garen 1 trick. If not, he's really high Diamond, like Diamond 1, right? This guy, I'm sorry I don't know your name off the top of my head. I'm sure you listen to the podcast and like, what the fuck? But he went into so much little tips and tricks on Garen that you would not believe. There's so many little finesse. And just it's the play Garen, right? You would think it's just run at the person and press E. It's not.
Of course.
There's a lot to it.
You're telling me there's more?
There's a lot more.
Because I don't believe you.
Yeah. So that Garen podcast, I guarantee, is probably one of the best ones we've done in a while. The Akali podcast, and Akali, we had two guests on one podcast for Akali. So the first time we've had two people besides hosts talking about Akali and how to play her. I think one's AP, one's tank. So you get two different perspectives, which is pretty cool.
Tank Akali. Fucking tank.
Right. So yeah, patreon.com/TForce Network, $10. You get the podcast today, by the time this podcast comes out, they'll be out there. So $10, give it to us, you get them, and then you can just subtract your payment. You have all the information you want. Plus, you get access to all of the previous Champions League podcasts. There's like almost 40 of them out at this point. So, Skyen, pitch.
Yes, you can find me, as Adam said at the top of the show, on Twitter at TBSKYEN, TBSkyen. Or you can head to castercomics.com, and that's comics with an X instead of a CS at the end, where I am doing League of Legends comics for the esports scene, and I am doing as I mentioned, a Star Guardian webcomic, just all about the Star Guardians hanging out, doing high school girl things, and fighting monsters.
Like, totally. This could be great.
Like, totally. I mean, it's totally. It's so cool. You should give me all your money, just so I can do it. Yeah.
You have to do. So, just to sidetrack this before we end, my wife's a speech pathologist, or she's in grad school to become a speech pathologist, and they talk about creaky voice for a lot of girls have creaky voice, and they'll go, like that. See, I don't know how you write that out, but like I guess the majority of like high school and early college girls talk like this. Just keep it in mind.
I think it's called vocal fry or something like that.
They call it creaky voice at this point. That is like the technical name they go by. It's pretty. It's interesting. Whatever. I'll talk about it later. I don't want to talk about it on the podcast. So guys, that's Trinity Force podcast. We will see you all on Wednesdays. We talk more about Warwick and how to play him and all the good stuff. So peace.
Yeah. See you guys. Later.